Sex workers of the world, unite! Right, guys? Guys? The oldest job in the world is one of the most stigmatized. It's also the most dangerous. Being a sex worker is riskier than being a firefighter, a coal miner, or a police officer, and yet it has fewer protections than any of those. And now that an anti-trafficking bill has been signed into law, sex work could become even more dangerous. This episode, we're looking at how the best way to protect sex workers and stop sex trafficking is to make the profession of pleasuring people legal. No, really. You know, it feels fitting that we're doing a piece on sex workers now, as our president may end up being taken down by a porn star. Shit is getting stormy. Can I just say that Trump being undone by his favorite vice is such a perfect example of poetic justice that I feel like Oompa Loompas are gonna roll him out of the Oval Office. What do you get when you cheat on your wife? But some of the conversation around Stormy Daniels reminds us of how sex workers, from strippers to porn stars to prostitutes, are often treated in the US. Just listen to how some people discuss Stormy's interview on 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper.
It's not really that credible from a stripper porn star.
This is a porn star. Why are we giving it any credibility?
In essence, Anderson Cooper is no different than Stormy Daniels in being a striptease exhibitionist.
Well, aren't you so... Anderson Cooper striptease? I'd watch that. I would watch the f*** out of that. Sex workers are often talked about and portrayed as untrustworthy, unreliable, and generally looked down upon. We've all seen Pretty Woman. But that Hollywood white knight in shining armor story is a great segue into a disclaimer before we go on, because another part of the stigmatization around sex workers has to do with making assumptions about them. For example, not all sex workers are trying to get out of the sex industry and waiting to be rescued by some silver fox, unless it's Anderson Cooper. Not all are drug addicts, nor are all sex workers happy, empowered, self-determining feminists who love their jobs. Think of sex work like driving for Uber. There are all kinds of workers, some who do it for a little bit, some who do it full time, and most of whom just want you to get in and out without making too much of a mess. And like driving for Uber, sex work usually isn't people's first choice of work. Just ask this British sex worker and advocate.
Women make a decision to go into prostitution like I did, like thousands of other women like me, because...
Is it what you really wanted to do?
Well, it's because you make a decision about what job you go into in the same way as a lot of other people do. You look at your options. You know, I wanted to be a firefighter when I first started out.
Damn, that is a harsh wake-up call. And yet, you still save lives, girl. Every day. What remains constant is that the sex industry isn't going anywhere, because the demand isn't going anywhere. There are an estimated 1 million sex workers in the US, and by some estimates, it's a $14 billion industry here. And being a sex worker is arguably more dangerous than being a firefighter. One study showed that sex workers are 18 times more likely to be murdered than other women. And when sex workers are subject to violence by clients or pimps, they can't go to the police because their work is illegal.
You can't really report rape to the police if you're a sex worker, because then you get met with like stigma, and also a lot of the time you get arrested.
Years ago, I reported a rape from a client I was supposed to be working with, and I just wound up getting arrested.
This is exactly why predators target us and try to abuse us, because they know that we can't trust the police for help.
And as another sex worker explains, in countries where sex work is criminalized, they become trapped in a vicious cycle.
Criminalization is a trap. It's hard to get a conventional job when you have a criminal record. Potential employers won't hire you. The law forces you to keep selling sex.
Yeah, the logic in criminalizing sex work is twisted, because when you criminalize something, you push it farther underground, like the war on drugs, abortions, or Call of Duty. Outlawing it won't get your kid out of the basement. It will just drive him into some other mother's basement. And she doesn't get home till 6. And all of that is why a recent anti-trafficking bill signed into law has made many current sex workers even more worried for their safety. It's called the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, which holds websites that might host advertisements posted by sex traffickers accountable for that content. And it's probably the only piece of legislation that Trump has signed that got this reaction. That is awesome, and also exactly what was going on inside of Paul Ryan when Trump cut taxes for the 1%. Dust the poor people off. Raise inequality, raise inequality. But of course, it makes sense that former sex trafficking victims like her would want to hail this bill as a victory, because sex trafficking isn't sex work, it's slavery, and many people, including children, are victims of it. But the cost of this law might outweigh the benefits. In fact, the largest anti-trafficking organization in the country opposed it. They say that websites where sex is sold have helped law enforcement find and arrest traffickers, and that internet sites provide a digital footprint that law enforcement can use to investigate trafficking into the sex trade, and to locate trafficking victims. See, the bill weakens a section of the Communications Decency Act and holds websites accountable for material that users post, which could lead them to shut down. For decades, websites haven't been blamed for what users post on them, which is in part what has kept the internet open and censorship-free, in good ways. And the reason that Mark Zuckerberg isn't held accountable for every alt-right rant that insists the swastika is actually just an ancient symbol that means good luck. It does not, and you do not intend it that way. The ACLU says the bill would significantly chill the explosion of online political, artistic, and commercial speech without improving the plight of sex trafficking victims. And sex workers agree, because if sites are forced to shut down, suddenly the quality of their working conditions will also take a hit. Just listen to this sex worker who says taking away online platforms is dangerous.
As a sex worker, you should have the right to screen your demographic, who you're dealing with, opposed to being into street work where you don't know what situation you're walking into.
Backpage.com was just shut down, and Craigslist, to preemptively avoid legal action, also took down their personal ads section, which will probably just push those steamy personal ads elsewhere, and definitely make the furniture for sale by owner section a lot more interesting. Lovely, gently used couch and vagina. The recent bill does have good intentions to stop trafficking, but sex workers say they feel their safety and concerns aren't often taken into account when drafting legislation. One study in the UK found that 80% of sex workers say the internet improved the quality of their working life. They don't have to be on the streets, they don't have to rely on pimps for protection, and they can vet clients before they agree to go into business together, which is what I'm going to tell my future daughter where babies come from. Your father and I decided to go into business together, and you are our little startup. So go make some returns on our investment. They say that bringing sex workers out from the shadows and protecting them will also ultimately protect people from being trafficked, because the overall goal is to stop exploitation. So making sex work safer might mean moving towards decriminalization, where police can't arrest you for buying or selling sex. The World Health Organization, Amnesty International, and the United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS all recommend that decriminalizing sex work is the best way to combat the negative effects of it. Like in New Zealand, where one American brothel owner decided to set up shop.
Women who decide to be sex workers are highly skilled professionals. Their work comprises therapy, it comprises acting, it comprises massage skills, any number of things, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be safe, healthy, and very well compensated. This is a job where a young woman can set her own hours, be entirely flexible, earn $150 an hour plus, and have free childcare on site.
Wow, it says a lot when a brothel cares more about its employees than Walmart. Just saying. Walmart is a wage pimp. By the way, when New Zealand decriminalized sex work in 2003, sex workers reported feeling more empowered and more willing to report crime to the police. And the number of street-based sex workers in the country didn't go up, even though many people thought it would. Or what about straight-up legalization, which means a government-regulated industry like any other, like in Nevada, the state that gave us delightful brothels such as the Bunny Ranch, which, as too many German tourists on family road trips have discovered, has very few actual bunnies. One study found that because of regulated testing and condom wearing, sex workers in Nevada actually have a lower rate of STDs than porn stars in Los Angeles. There's no joke for that, but wrap it up. Now, I'm sure for a lot of us, there's a part of you that shudders at the idea of having to sleep with someone for money. And of course, for some who do sell sex, they want a way out. But marginalizing and criminalizing sex workers won't help them leave the industry. The way out of the work is the way out of a lot of bad jobs, having more bargaining rights and other well-paying opportunities. Because we know that low-income people are more likely to turn to sex work. So what about raising the minimum wage, or making college affordable, or making corporations pay their fair share of taxes to support public services? All of those issues have to do with sex workers' rights, which is why many activists are saying this.
Make space for us in your movements. That means not only listening to sex workers when we speak, but amplifying our voices.
Yes, it is time to listen to the people who pleasure you for a living. Otherwise, they might come back to bite you in the ass. I know it was a spank. I know. I just didn't want to think about it, and now I'm thinking about it. Thank you, Stormy. No, I'm not gonna read the interview where you describe as junk. Thanks for watching Newsbroke. I'm Francesca Fiorentini. Follow me on Twitter at FrannyFio. Also, we're gonna do an upcoming Q&A video, so keep the questions coming. What do you wanna know? What do you wanna know? I'll tell you anything. And make sure to subscribe right now to Newsbroke on YouTube. And also follow us on Facebook, all right? The follow button. And we'll see you next week.